Yes. The next speaker is our sister Esther Olale. She is a project manager. Yes, Prince 2 certified project manager with over 6 years project experience, delivering business change and digital transformation projects within the health, public, and legal sector. Please welcome Esther Olale.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you finding the day so far? Informative. I was just saying on the table here, there's something for everyone, depending on how open-minded you are. So I'm the project manager, and it took me a very long time to get here, but the wonderful thing about project management, regardless of what your role is within project management, because it's very vast, all these sectors and industries that we've heard about, even in the civil service, you can work as a project management professional. So I think it's just about being open-minded and just don't limit yourself to one specific industry. I know some people want to work in banking, maybe because their parents worked as bankers or whatever, so you feel like, oh, I have to work in banking. But even if you're not a banker in the true sense of the word, if you want to get into project management as a business analyst, a digital marketer, a civil servant, those industry, the roles of project management is represented in all those industries, even in healthcare. So if you've recently come into the country and you're working in the healthcare professional, if you have a plan, or if you're working with an organization or someone that can help you put a plan together, you could work towards becoming a project management professional in the healthcare industry. So my encouragement to us, in addition to everything we've already heard so far, is be very open-minded, don't be close-minded. The way God would, for those of us who believe in God, not assuming that we all believe in God, but if, the way you can be favored is not, it's much better if you're open-minded, because you can talk to someone like our speaker here, Mr. Femi said, all you need is one opportunity. And something I learned from John Maxwell is that there's a principle called failing forward. So people who have succeeded at everything, you went to school, you passed all your exams, you went to secondary school, passed all your exams, you were always at the top. They've never experienced failure. So sometimes we feel like that's the definition of success. But people who have failed, they've learned how to push through obstacles. So an obstacle could be that, okay, I'm not earning enough and I want to push myself to earn more. So that could be your obstacle. So maybe you feel like, okay, I've not really been successful according to the world of society's or my community's definition of success. But then you push yourself forward and you get that role, whether it's at the level you want, but you get it. As we're talking here, we're just breaking into some of these areas, and I'll be talking about breaking into project management. So how many people are project management professionals here? Let's just see. Okay, you're actively working in project management. You were a project manager. Okay. How many people have worked in project management? Okay, just one person. How many people want to break into or are interested in breaking into project management? Okay, so that's fine. Something for us to think about. Okay, well, I'll get through. I'll just do it very quickly. Perhaps what you wanted to hear about has been covered. So what is project management? I've put two definitions. So one that's used more globally is PMI, and the one that we use more in the United Kingdom is the second one, and that refers to Prince 2. So how many people have heard of Prince 2? Okay, that's better. So according to PMI, project management is defined as the use of specific knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to deliver something of value to people. So our speaker here was talking about when you have a business, your business is delivering value to people. So if you package it as a project, okay, I want to be a fashion designer, I want to own a fashion brand. You can package it as a project up until the point where you start selling your goods and services, but you are delivering some form. The end result of that is that you're delivering some form of value. So in an organization or corporate setting, we talk about it more from a point of view of benefits. So in the intro, it says that I specialize in digital transformation and business change projects. So a business change project could be that, okay, maybe everybody comes in at 9:30, that's the agreed standard time. But we want to change the time of working for everyone to start at 9 o'clock. We cannot just announce, although some people do that, we don't just announce and say, oh, from tomorrow, everybody must come in. We have to do quite a number of things to get us to that place. That's changing the culture, changing behavior. So that's a very, very loose example. It could be, okay, maybe people clock in and we want them to now, they have to come into work and clock in on a device on the wall at work. So I had to do that when I worked for McDonald's many, many years ago. You come into work and you clock in. But now there are apps that you can use. Once you come into work, clock in on your app, you log in and the system and management know that you're there. So that's a business change. You're going from an outdated system to an updated system. That's a business change. That's also a digital transformation project because you're going from an outdated digital way of working to an updated digital way of working. So projects I'm currently working on right now, I'm working on, I was working on the SharePoint project. So moving us from an outdated data management to SharePoint, which is used all over the world. SharePoint is part of Microsoft Office, so you probably already know, and it's just a way to store data, etc., and all those things. But it's a digital transformation project because it represents changing the way we work, right? So it's about delivering value to people. So the people could be the management, the organization, a business unit, a community. That's what that is all about. And the Auxilios, which is responsible for Prince 2, defines project management as the discipline of applying specific processes and principles to initiate, plan, execute, and manage the way that new initiatives or changes are implemented within an organization. So within that first sentence, that's the life cycle, according to Prince 2, of a project. So you initiate, that's the starting point. Two of you might come together and say, oh, we want to do this. You've already started talking. That could be, some people would say, it could be a verbal conversation, it could be a written email, it could be something along those lines. Oh, I think we should do this. We've been struggling with this. I think we should do this. And as I'm talking through, I want you to think about your current situation where you are, how you don't have to be the director or CEO or a senior person to suggest possible projects. You can suggest it, and if it's something that the organization you're working for needs, they might decide to run with it either there and then or put it on the pipeline of future projects they want to deliver. And that's usually called a project. Some people call it part of the project charter. Some people call that part of the, what's the other one? I was going to say project brief, but it's just like an outline of what the project is. That's the official line to say, okay, this is when we agreed, or this is when this idea came through. It's been discussed at a very high level. And then once you get allocated there as a project manager, you have a series of meetings and then you go through to the next stage, which is planning. So in that phase, you start to engage with different stakeholders, and stakeholders just mean anyone who's interested. So I said I work as a project manager. Mr. Femi works as an automation engineer. Is that right? Okay. So he's an IT professional. So if you're working in project management and you're doing a lot of IT or digital transformation projects, you will always work with people in IT. I work with people, I work with business analysts because they define the requirements. So those are two stakeholders. Depending on the type of project, if it's a project that involves branding or marketing, we could have our digital marketer. If you're a UX specialist, that's user design, that could also be involved, so there are different types of stakeholders involved. It just means anyone that is interested or will be impacted by the project or the change that you're delivering. So all these people will come together as needed in each meeting and start to plan. And it's from that point where project plans, timelines, how the project will be managed, governed, the budget, the cost, etc. will be planned out. And once all that is done, you may not have it down to the detail, but you begin to formulate it. And I always say with teams that I'm working on, especially if it's a new project and I'm trying to drive it forward, I always say, let's start with a skeleton. And why I like to say let's start with a skeleton is, in the true sense of the word, a skeleton is just like a frame with bones, right? There's no flesh, there's no muscles, sinews, no organs, nothing. That's the basic form of it. So when you see it, you can say, oh no, actually this does not fit the frame that we are thinking of in terms of planning, documentation, all those things. And then you can begin to take things out. So if things are disjointed, you can take it and begin to put it in the right place. So that all that happens in the planning, then as you go on, as you move from plan to execution, it begins to take on more form and flesh. But execution is where you actually, it's called delivery. That's where you actually begin to do the work because you've already done the planning. So we talked about earlier, we heard about doing research before you go out into the market. So in project management, that's planning, right? And then when you go into execution, that's where you now say, okay, maybe within the next 3 months, we've already done all our discovery, we've done all our investigations, we've put all the plans in place, everything has approvals, and now we're going to start delivering the project. And that's where, obviously I'm speaking at a high level here, but that's where you do that. And then managing the way that new initiatives or changes are implemented. So part of a process in Prince 2 is what you call monitoring. So whilst delivery is going on, you have things. How many people have heard of quality control or quality assurance? Yes, so as you're doing a project, depending on what approach you're taking, you have to keep checking that what you're delivering is fit for purpose, because a lot of projects actually fail. So when you do the research, you will see that a lot of projects fail. And it may not be that they don't deliver, but they fail maybe on 3 key quadrants, which could be on time. So let's say they budgeted 1 year to deliver a project, but they deliver that project within 2 years. Even though point in case could be the government, there are many projects that they deliver or that they're doing, but they fail in terms of their targets. So HS2, how many people have heard of HS2, the high-speed train, right? So they've already spent billions, and I don't think they've finished, and they've already, made an amendment to it. They're not going to do what they originally told us, the public, they were going to do. So within project management understanding, that's a failed project, even though they delivered something, because they have not met their original aims and the project deliverables. And so project deliverables in a simple, and the reason why I'm taking time to go through this is you might already be doing those things, but if you're looking to break into project management, you need to start thinking in those terms and see, okay, how am I already doing those things? I may not be called a project officer, a project manager, a project management officer, except or whatever the various role, project analyst. But I'm already doing those things. So when you now begin to look at your CV, how you're packaging your CV, how you're tailoring your CV, and we're not saying, when we say tailor, we don't mean lie, but we're saying, do an assessment of where you are currently and begin to see how does what I already do now, how does it fit into what I'm trying to do, right? So when you begin to think that way, you actually see that we're all involved in some form of project management or the other. Okay, so a key thing to note about project management is it's very different to what you do on a day-to-day basis in your role. So if you are a healthcare professional, day in, day out, there are key things that you do that's non-negotiable. That's what we call business as usual. So if that is not happening, then you might get fired. That's quite different to what a project is. A project is trying to introduce a change. So if what you're doing is not introducing a change, it is not a project. And there are many initiatives that have been termed projects, but they are not actually projects in the true sense of the word. Because project is about introducing change. So a project will involve the setting up of a temporary organization. And what that just means is that a special team will be set up to deliver that project. That's called a temporary organization. It doesn't mean like an entire organization, but it just means a special team, a temporary organization to deliver that change. Once that change has been delivered and accepted by the organization, that team will be disbanded and they would either go on to work on the next project or go back to their day-to-day. They're not on day-to-day roles. Okay. And as everyone has said, if you have any specific questions, because time's not on our side today, we'll deal with it in the breakout session. So I've already talked about that. The key quadrants I mentioned are time, scope, and budget. Budget is a really key one. So if you work in finance and you find that you want to transition, you could leverage on that and be like maybe a project manager that works in the finance industry because you understand money, budgeting, etc. Let's move on. So I've already talked about what a project is. It's a temporary venture to produce a defined outcome. So we already talked about the change that we're trying to introduce. And I just talked about that. So I've talked about the time. That's a key thing. If your project goes over time and you deliver, it's a failed project. But failed project does not mean that the project did not deliver. It just means a project that is not failed is one that achieves. So if you say, we have this project and we want to deliver it in 1 year, want to spend £500,000, and this is the scope, ABC, and you are able to achieve all those things within all the definitions you set, that is a project that has been successful. A project you deliver that does not meet even one of those things is a failed project. And if you do your research, you'll see that all over the world, globally, there's a lot of failed projects for various reasons. It doesn't mean they haven't delivered. It just means based on those things. So if you are able, as an individual or a project professional, to show how you are constantly delivering projects that always meet this target, you will be highly sought after. And that's actually something you can put on your profile, on LinkedIn or on your CV. So I won't go through this, but I think that the slides will be, if the slides are made available. I won't go through this because I've got a few minutes. So key thing to note is there are various approaches to delivering projects. So I mentioned, or it was mentioned, that I'm a Prince 2 certified professional. But then there's also the agile methodology, and Prince 2 just basically is a process, although they now have Prince 2 agile, but my Prince 2 that I did years ago is just a waterfall way of delivering projects. And what that just means is you deliver it in a very sequential way. So you do A, once A is done, then you move to B. Once B is done, you move to C. Once C is done, you don't go from A to C or A to Z. It's very linear. You go from, you go in that direction, but with Agile, it's slightly different. It's quite iterative. It's a way to deliver very quick wins to the organization. And an example that is very good to use is we all have mobile phones, whether you're on iOS or OS, it doesn't really matter. But constantly we are being told, oh, there's an update on your phone, update it. I'm sure if you have an Android, I used to have a Samsung S2. And what's the latest version of Samsung now? Okay, Samsung 20-something. It's still an ongoing project. They're delivering it using agile methodologies, but from the point where Samsung, the first Samsung, you cannot even compare, but they've been delivering value to the business and to the customer ever since. So there are two types of values. They could update the hardware or the way the phone looks and release that into the market, or they could keep updating software on the phone. That's Agile, that's basically essentially what Agile is. And there are different ways to deliver a project using Agile methodology. So we have things called Scrum, we have Kanban, we have process-driven processes and different ways. And in the breakout section, I could, just highlight some of them to you. There are different methodologies. So methodology is just basically the way you deliver it. And an approach is, we'll say you're doing it either using Prince2 or Agile. So I hope that makes sense. Right, so I already talked very briefly about this. So these are some of the skills. You need management skills, decision-making skills, problem-solving skills, attention to this detail. A key one we need is stakeholder management, because projects involve dealing with people, relating with people. So if you don't know how to manage people or work with people, listen to what they want. Remember, you're not working for yourself. You might be the project manager or on a project team, but if you don't know how to meet the needs of these stakeholders, then your project will get hindered. Seriously, because if a stakeholder feels like you're not listening to them, especially if that stakeholder is a director, then they could be, and I've experienced it myself. I worked on a project recently, and the director went to my boss, the head of PMO, and just complained basically that he didn't know what was going on the project, even though we were having weekly meetings. So those are some of the skills that you need. So the whole point of having this is to begin to do an audit of the current skills you have. And we can talk about this in the breakout session and begin to see, okay, if these are some of the project management skills and I want to break into project management, how can I even begin to pull it out? So I'll stop here because my time is up, and we will go through the rest in the breakout session and some of the things that we can do. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.